I mean, Melchizedek didn't get a Mike. Why didn't they just change his name to Mike? I don't get it. We're just cherry picking names, all I'm saying. Other people get their own name. Nebuchadnezzar got a cool name. But then we get John? Get out of here.
Dearly beloved, welcome to the Unblessed Podcast, where we inquire and exposit the mysteries of that ancient text, that good book itself, the Holy Bible. We are not theologians nor historians. We are but armchair philosophers who spent years in seminary or on a church staff and have since departed to make our own way. We invite you now to read, think, and laugh with us as we dive deep into the denominational doctrines of the divine in the Unblessed Podcast. Welcome to the Unblessed Podcast, where we dive deep into the weirdness and fun stories of the Bible, the funny little idiosyncrasies of Christian church culture and Bible stories. We are two ex-Easter service playboys.
Yes.
Scott, were you ever in an Easter play?
Oh, Easter play. I don't know if
or were you just a playboy walking around in the Easter service?
I was just a playboy. Just every Easter service, we get all dolled up. I mean, that was it's Super Bowl Sunday for any church is Easter. It is like, I would say more than Christmas. Would you agree? Or do you think Christmas is bigger than Easter?
I think that there's a lot more put on Easter than there is Christmas. And I kind of think rightfully so when you zoom out and you think about Christianity, like Easter is the big one. And it should be. That's like, so what? Someone being born, people are born every day. Not every day does somebody rises from the dead, you know? Yeah. But like a lot of stuff is, and people do a lot more family stuff around Christmas. So either, they come to church during that time just to like appease family, or they, you've got some other stuff going on. But with Easter, it's, this is our Easter sermon. This is our Easter sermon series. Like, there's always a sermon series leading up to the penultimate Easter.
Oh, yeah.
A sunrise service of sorts, or,
man.
Did you ever go to a sunrise service?
I think we had them, but it was not a common thing. It rings a bell, but we just had to get all dolled up every Easter. That's when you got the good clothes out. You got the khakis, you got the button-ups, even the ties on. It was real deal at my church.
Yeah, because God can't hear your prayers unless you're dressed extra nice for Easter.
Well, it's the VIP. It's like the fast lane pass. I'm not a Disney person. I don't know. Is that what they call it at Disney? Fast lanes?
You got it close. It's Fast Pass.
I honestly don't care. Disney adults scare me a lot.
Fair enough.
But
if you're a Disney adult listening to this podcast, tweet at Hot Dog Water.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I'll
fight you.
And tell him he's acting like he's Gaston, but he's LeFou.
I think I know who those people are. Yeah, Easter. It was I don't know. I never had a play. Were you part of? You said you were part of Easter plays, though.
No, I was a part of a play. We just used this as a fun introduction. I did what's called an Easter cantata, which we did an early recording where we did this before, and Scott thought I was saying katana the entire time.
Yes.
A cantata is just kind of like a musical, a vocal composition, possibly with an instrumental. Like, basically, it's just a choir performance is what a cantata is, but it's a choir performance of a story is what it is. And I was part of one or two Easter cantatas at my church, and so it was like we did a lot of practicing for all the different like. I think we had a Eastern cantata and a Christmas cantata. Those were our two.
Gotcha. We would just do. They did have an Easter skit play. I say skit because it was maybe like 10 minutes long of the crucifixion and resurrection, and I just remember each year
What's the deal with sin?
turns your hat backwards, sits on a chair backwards.
Just the idea of an Easter skit.
I mean, it was not that. Sometimes they were not great. It was
just like Kenan Thompson being out there and being like, "This is ridiculous."
I wish we had a Keenan at our church as an associate pastor. I just remember like the first few years, at least I remember it as a kid, the production was a lot more involved. And then over the years, they just could not find people to keep filling in spots. So the cast got smaller and smaller. It went from like 20 people. There was a couple Roman soldiers and there was Jesus and a couple disciples and Mary and like all these people. And then it went to just like, there was Jesus and one soldier and one angel and another, just some guy in like khakis, but with a headband. It's just like the most cheesy, low budget, church sketch you can imagine. But
I love a good Easter play. I always do. A friend of mine in college, I was sitting around and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "Oh, every year we live tweet our Easter play." Because there's always something going wrong with it.
Oh, no.
And there was one year where this kid, he was telling me a story. There was one year where this kid was playing Jesus, and they have this like big rock in the center, and they got to get to like move away. And this kid was playing Jesus, and he's supposed to be like all like, arms out, whatever. Instead, he just like puts his hands out and like mic drops.
Oh my gosh.
That's like it. I think that's the story. There's another one that's made the rounds on like Tumblr and Twitter about how like they crucified Jesus. It's like these Roman soldiers and they put him up there, but then Jesus falls off of the prop cross.
I was just about to bring this up. I saw like a clip of Jesus falling off the cross.
There was one where it's like, this person was like, I just saw the funniest Jesus play of all time. It's like, this happened, Jesus fell off the cross after they put him up there, and one of the soldiers goes, "Well, you get away with it this time, Jesus."
I was just thinking, like, what do you do? Like,
I think that's the best response. Nobody's sitting there being like, "Oh God, what's next?" Like, we all know this freaking story.
The thought of watching Jesus fall off a cross and then decide, I better get back up there and finish this job. Like, I should probably get up there.
Oh, man.
All right, well, here's my icebreaker today that's related.
Okay, what's up?
To Easter. I'm curious, at what age, and it could be any age, did you stop believing in the Easter Bunny? Or did you ever have a year where you believed in the Easter Bunny? Or do you still believe in the Easter Bunny, and am I ruining it for you right now?
I'm going to need a moment. Easter Bunny, I remember believing in the Easter Bunny when I was like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
He was just kind of like spring Santa Claus, I legit
That's
believed,
a really good way of saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I legit believed that there was this giant bunny that hopped around and gave us baskets full of like different things, and hopped away.
Did you imagine this bunny as like a real rabbit that was just large, or like a man with just like a rabbit head, like Donnie Darko kind of like person?
I think it varied. I think there was some time. I think when I would get to thinking about it, like a rabbit in like a man's suit, like it seemed a little too like a man in a rabbit suit seemed a little too weird. And so like, I guess like man size, but with like rabbit hind legs is how I would have imagined it as like a kid.
Interesting.
But when you're like 4 or 5, everybody's 13 feet tall. So
Good point.
the idea that there was a rabbit that was huge was not that far fetched.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think the Easter Bunny held that much weight for me as a kid, and so it was. I think my parents got off easy on that one. Where I just I never asked about the Easter Bunny, whether Easter Bunny was gonna come, and so they would just kind of like, we just won't do it.
Yeah, I can't imagine a lot of kids getting that upset about like the Easter Bunny being ruined for them.
Yeah,
I feel that's one where even children, after a couple years, go, all right, that's enough. This is pretty ridiculous.
I did try to con my dad on the Tooth Fairy one time, because I don't know what he was thinking. I lost a tooth. I put it under my pillow, and he mistakenly put $100 under my pillow.
100 buckaroos.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You're getting nickels and dimes over our house.
I know.
Woo.
I don't know what he was thinking. And so I was like, God damn, that must have been a pretty good tooth. To look at what Tooth Fairy gave me. And he was like,
oh no.
The Tooth Fairy is going to need that back. And I was like, but it's mine. He was like, no. And so
I know the Tooth Fairy. They need it back.
I was a very young kid, and so I threw a fit about it, and he sits down and he goes, Evan, do you really think that there's a person flying around
Oh, he broke it to you.
and collecting teeth in trade for money? And I was like, I do think it's a better strategy to do like nickels and dimes and quarters, because otherwise you fall into this trap. Other than like, why are you wasting a fucking dollar on a tooth? You know?
I remember believing, I mean, the Tooth Fairy's in the same plane for me as Easter Bunny. Like, it was probably about 4, maybe after preschool, maybe around kindergarten. I was thinking, something's not adding up with all this. But Easter Bunny is just, I don't know anything about the origin really. I don't know why we even choose to celebrate as Christians. Uh-oh, Evan knows. He's got...
I mean, like the Easter Bunny is a symbol of fertility, and it's bringing in spring. It's another one of those situations where Christianity just kind of like with Christmas and Easter, they were both situations where there were big holidays for pagans, and so Christians were just kind of like, this is a convenient time to celebrate God too.
I think you're wrong. I think the Easter Bunny is a Christian, and that's why we celebrate the Easter Bunny.
Is the Easter Bunny saved?
An evangelical.
Is he saved? I'm not seeing anything about the Easter Bunny being saved, though I do see very adorable pictures of bunnies in baskets next to eggs.
I was always taught animals were not saved. So Easter bunnies, unless they have some kind of sentient human soul inside of it, they go to hell. Yeah. They don't even go to hell. They just die. They just die in the ground.
No. So they just die and go in the ground, and that's kind of it.
All Dogs Go to Heaven was a heretical movie in my household.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were very much like, with my family, and to this day, we're pretty much just like, if a dog dies and it's a good dog, it's in heaven, because we can't imagine any other fate. Like,
if it's a good dog.
I mean, like, it's like, well, of course, like, how and what, like, how is that fair? And then you kind of get into the nitty gritty of it, and it's like, what's the definition of a bad worm? Like,
my thing, and this is me being a huge dork, like I was when I was on fire for the Lord.
Dork alert, Scott.
I had a debate with somebody about what happens to like children, babies, like when they die before they make a decision, like what happens. And some churches will say, I think we talked about this last episode, there's like an age of accountability, but one pastor I was kind of interning for was like, if we're really, the way we interpret it, you have to make that conscious decision. So he said like, yeah, if your baby dies, it will go to hell because it's born in sin.
Fuck.
Yeah. And so then that got me thinking, well, if babies would go to hell, then why would my dog get a pass?
Yeah.
Like, why would God go, I want the dogs, but babies burn?
Yep.
So that's when I was like, okay, well, I guess if babies die and go to hell, then all animals either just rot in the ground or they also go to hell. So
Yeah. I hate John Piper, but I like what he said about it one time. He was like, it is outside of the character of God because he's a Calvinist and he's just like, everything's preset, all this kind of stuff. He's like, it is outside of the character of God for God to send babies to hell.
Wow. John Piper said that.
Yeah. He was just like, everything we know about God, everything we know about, if you believe that God is a merciful God, then it is outside of his character for him to send babies to hell before they're able to make that decision.
I am kind of surprised by that.
Yeah.
He's very like hard line about certain topics.
Oh yeah, he is very hard line about a lot of things, but I just remember seeing that one time and I was like, that's a good take.
Okay, J Pipe, yeah.
Okay,
W.
JP.
One W for JP.
One W in the columns for JP.
I used to soak John Piper's like material up all the time, but there was some interview and I can't find it. But
is it the Curb Your Enthusiasm one?
The Curve one? Like a meme with him?
Yeah,
No,
okay.
I don't know. No, there's just like some interview that really turned me off to him was like, I don't remember. Someone was asking about like choosing between studying the word and like going to a party. And he was like, I'd rather stay home and like study the word. And I was like, you're a huge nerd. I don't want to follow you anymore.
I now realize how boring you are.
Wow, you are boring. So, but there's all sorts of things I don't like about him anymore.
No.
But
At what age did you stop believing in the Easter Bunny, or was the Easter Bunny ever a big deal for you?
Well, it was probably about 4 or 5 for me. But, yeah, it was probably around the age of, honestly, most things, even Santa was around 4 or 5. I was pretty early on that too. It was like, I think it was kindergarten. I remember having a conversation.
Scott was like, only God is real.
I was pretty on fire for the Lord early on, Evan.
God is real. Nothing else matters.
I mean, there was a time where I told myself if I ever had children, I would not teach them any form of like Easter Bunny or Tooth Fairy or Santa or anything.
I cannot imagine that. I think there was maybe a time where I was kind of considering it, but I was like, I thought about it and I was like, but like the social implications, like what if they go to school with someone who, like, how do you explain to your kid that there are other people? Like, how do you explain to your kid to not spill the beans to another kid?
You just instantly make them a strange kid is what you do by that. Like,
or a dick. Like your kid's the dick in the class walking around going, Santa's not real. Santa's not real.
Only Jesus. Only Jesus. I don't know, but I finally snapped out of that. But
and that's how God got banned from our schools.
Yep, that's right.
Exactly how it happened.
Speaking of banning God
Yep.
from schools.
We're talking about a guy who wanted to ban God from Israel.
They really wanted to ban a certain somebody
Yep.
from Israel. Really from the face of the earth, they wanted to ban him. What are we talking about today, Evan?
Well, it's getting to be Easter, and we thought we would talk about one of the resurrection stories. So these stories, we're not really going to be focusing on any one, though there is one that I think is kind of like a little bit funny. We're just going to be reading John 20 and just walking through it. So if you have your Bibles, and I hope you do,
you better.
Yeah. If
Come
you don't,
prepared.
the Easter Bunny's coming for you. We'll be starting in John chapter 20. On the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene, as I like to call her, Mary Magdafine. I'm cutting that.
Jeez. No, you are not.
Came to the
That's what you want to cut? You've said way worse and dumb things. And that's the first one you want to decide to pause? He's got to collect himself.
Oh, man. On the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early, while it was still dark. She saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb, so she ran to Simon Peter and to the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, which in context here is John. John refers to himself as the disciple that Jesus loved. It's supposed to be a form of humility of John being like, Jesus died for my sins. And so he's like, he went to Peter, and then the one that caused him to go up on the cross is the way John is allegedly writing this.
Oh, little nugget of Bible trivia for you. How about that?
And she said to them, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him. At that, Peter and the other disciple went out, heading for the tomb. The two were running together. But yeah. This is a dick move by John.
I know.
The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and got to the tomb first. That's literally what it says, except for the like, it's just like John's telling this story, and he's like, yeah, we both ran to the tomb. I got there faster.
I know. I was reading this before, and I didn't put together that he was referring to himself as the other disciple. That is so stupid.
Yeah.
And the other guy, we won't name names, but somebody else got there
first,
faster.
Didn't they, Peter?
So stupid.
Stooping down, he saw the linen cloths lying there, yet he did not go in. Then following him, Simon Peter came also.
And third.
He entered the tomb.
Second.
Yeah.
No, third. Second.
Peter came into their third, even though there was only two people. He's just so freaking
I always
slow.
forget there's Peter, then not Simon Peter. Wait, are these two different? No.
Simon Peter and Peter are the same people.
Yeah. There's somebody else there's two Jameses, right? There's a James and
There's
a
two
James.
James.
Zebedee.
Yeah, James and Zebedee is James.
They all had like the most basic names.
Yeah.
It was just a crew of just Johns and Bills and Tims and Todds. And
Well, Scott also, it was translated from another language.
No,
so
it was written in English,
Do you
Evan.
honestly think
Yep.
there was someone in Palestine,
Yep.
33 AD, named John?
Yeah. What else would his name be?
I don't know literally anything else.
Prove me wrong, listeners. Bible was
my
written in English. Written in English. Well, they could have picked a better name if it was supposed to be something else. Then why'd they go with like the most basic names like Bill and Ted and Steve? And
Because this is the English version of the Bible we're reading.
that's stupid. So if I meet a friend and his name is Jesus,
In Spanish, he's called Juan.
no,
Yes, he is.
I don't like that. Why let's have the original names. Original names in all of them. It's stupid.
Jesus,
How come Moses is Moses then?
Jesus' name is Yeshua originally?
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, well, that's fuck, Scott. Like, it's not Jesus.
Then why do we have the Spanish version for him? He's Jesus.
Yeah, he's Jesus in the Bible, is in the Spanish Bible.
Right, mine's Spanish. It says Jesus.
Yeah, but mine says Jesus. Like, I don't know how to have this conversation with you.
I mean, Melchizedek didn't get a Mike. Why didn't they just change his name to Mike? I don't get it. We're just cherry picking names is all I'm saying. Other people get their own name. Nebuchadnezzar got a cool name. But then we get John. Get out of here. Okay, I'm picking up where we left off.
Okay. For our readers' purposes, Jesus renamed Peter. Essentially, is what happened. He was originally called Simon, and then Peter apparently means rock somehow. And Jesus was like, "You're dumb as a rock. I'll name you Rock." Then following him, Simon Peter came also. He entered the tomb and saw the linen clothes lying there. The wrapping that had been on his head was not lying with the linen cloths, but was folded up in a separate place by itself.
Way to go, Jesus.
Yeah. Jesus rose from the dead, folded his clothes.
There was Airbnb rules in the tomb. It was like, leave the keys on the table, hold your linens.
They do not show that part of the Passion of the Christ with Jesus like folding his...
They just show his buns. That's it. They get a quick cheek shot. They do. You see his butt.
Quick cheek shot and the hole through the hands. They don't see him like, all right, and fold it into thirds.
Doing the weird chin thing with it. Like
he's doing like the quick retail flip.
He's folding a fitted sheet just like,
Oh, my gosh. Can you imagine if they walked in on Jesus trying to fold a fitted sheet and he was like, help.
I know I'm God, but damn, this is tough.
Oh, man. The other disciple, John, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first, just rubbing extra salt in the wound.
Just one more time.
Just in case Peter ever reads this. Then entered the tomb, saw and believed. For they still did not know the scripture that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples went home again. I don't know if I'd go home after just seeing somebody die and then not be dead anymore.
That's they had to watch their show, watch their programs.
Yep. Yeah. Well, in fairness, they didn't really see him. They just saw that like he wasn't there.
That's true.
But Mary stood outside facing the tomb, crying. As she was crying, she stooped to look into the tomb. She saw two angels in white sitting there, hanging out, one at the head and one at the feet where Jesus' body had been laying. They said to her, "Woman, why are you crying?"
Oof.
God, women in the Bible can't get a break.
We got bragging the other disciple up here, and then women just get not even a name, just woman.
Woman? And she has a name.
Yeah.
Like, because they've taken away my Lord, she told them, and I don't know where they put him. Having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. She pulled an old Tom Sawyer on her. She did not know it was Jesus. Woman, Jesus said to her, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for? You know who she's looking for.
Come on, he's
like,
being a little coy.
He's being a little coy. Which I think I would do the same. I will admit.
It's all about the fanfare.
If I did rise from the dead and you were looking for me and you were like, they've taken my podcast co-host away and I was, and you were at my tomb.
That's all you are to me, yeah.
I would be like, podcast co-host, who are you looking for?
Woman.
Crying. Why are you crying? Who are you looking for? Supposing he was the gardener.
Ooh. Wonder what she made her think he was the gardener.
This was like, you think about the fact that like it's often lost on folks that Jesus had a tomb to begin with. We are talking about biblical times. Like we're not every
like 1900, right?
Yeah. Not everyone had a tomb, and this was someone else's tomb. Like a family owned this tomb and put Jesus there. A
rental, timeshare, really.
Tomb was borrowed.
I just like to imagine that when she turned around, Jesus had like a big sun hat on and like an apron. With like little doilies on it, and like little dainty gloves on, with like a little pouch has like a little shovel.
He's in the middle of like weeding a garden,
just like just planting some tomatoes.
Woman, why are you crying?
Yeah.
Oh, these will bloom nicely in the summer.
These darn rabbits this time of year.
I tell you,
keep getting into my carrots,
laying eggs.
Laying eggs.
Supposing he was the gardener, she replied, "Sir, if you've removed him, tell me where you've put him, and I will take him away." Jesus said, "Mary." Ooh. Turning around, she said to him in Hebrew, I'm going to butcher it, Rabboni?
Good luck.
Yeah, which means teacher. Don't cling to me, Jesus told her, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go away. So I don't like PDA. I don't like PDA.
Ew, gross.
Yeah, that's something we're not there in our relationship yet. Sorry,
Ew, girls.
But go to my brothers and tell them that I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. Big thing about John is John really harps on Jesus being the Son of God more than any other
that
book.
is true.
Harps on his divinity and refers to it a lot more. Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, I have seen the Lord, and she told them what he has said to her, and they probably didn't believe her because she's a woman in the Bible.
I mean, probably. It's very possible.
What do you want from me? In the evening of that first day of the week, the disciples were gathered together with the doors locked because of their fear of the Jews. Then Jesus came, stood among them via a magic trick, and said to them, "Peace to you." Having said this, he showed them his hands and his side. So the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. Jesus said to them again, "Peace to you. As the Father has sent me, I also send you." After saying this, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." I kind of want to stop there because that gets lost. That kind of idea in the Christian religion gets lost a whole lot of times. That the idea of that you should... I have this whole thing about forgiveness, that forgiveness shouldn't just be like willy-nilly. It's a path that you have to walk. And you have to... It takes a long time to forgive somebody who has really wronged you. But there's a flip side of it that Jesus says right here, if you retain the sins of any, they are retained. He's saying, if you hold a grudge...
Pastor Evan.
I'm not... there are several points in the Bible where Jesus, in a parable or in some type of other situation, says, if you don't forgive other people, I won't forgive you.
Yeah. Absolutely. It absolutely is like the crux of his message right there. And it's almost too, to me, it feels like too black and white for the modern day, like evangelical. Because it's like, well, but there's original sin and like it's the, he was fulfilling the prophecy and his Christ, we need a blood sacrifice to appease a holy God and blah, 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 blah. But it's like at the end of the day, Jesus was just like, just be nice. Yeah. Just forgive people. And if you don't, then you're not going to get forgiven.
Yeah.
End of story.
Don't be just a dick.
Like don't be a dick. And it's gotten so convoluted since then, but that's a good point. I forgot that he breathed on him. That breath was hot. They didn't have like Listerine back then. So it was
nice and dusty from that tomb.
Oh, can you imagine people's breath back then though? Like it couldn't have been good.
I'm sure there was hygiene. They washed with water and soap back then.
Well, I'm not saying that they weren't hygienic at all, but I mean, people were not brushing twice a day back then.
Brush their teeth.
Maybe they had chew sticks. Maybe they had some what's the popular thing?
Chewing on bark or sticks with frayed edges was the big thing.
I mean, my dog does that now.
So, I don't know. Maybe they all pop a breath mint before they go into a meeting with each other.
You think Jesus had a breath mint? He just popped a quick lifesaver?
Yep.
Quick tic tac, and then breathed on him. Receive the Holy Spirit.
If you forgive the sins of any, they're forgiven.
Yeah.
Them. If you retain the sins of any, they're retained. Important message, I think, that gets lost in whenever we talk about Jesus, and because I think sometimes evangelicals make that message too easy on themselves. No, I'm a Christian. I'm saved.
Yeah.
La-di-da-di-da. Let's go to New York and protest the indictment,
I'm in the club. I don't have to do anything else. I'm safe.
I'm okay. My way or the highway. And that's not what is being said here.
Yep.
Next we get to, but one of the 12, Thomas, called Twin. I love nicknames in the Bible. It's like nicknames when your like dad was a kid and he was like, yeah, we called this kid Sky because he walked in with a hat one day and we were like, boy, that hat's sky high.
This one's Stinky.
Yeah.
That's because he ate a whole pickle in one sitting.
We call this guy Cheese because he put cheese on his face one time.
This is called, guys, his 3 nipples. That's because he has a couple cars in his garage, 3 cars.
If you're ever sitting there as a millennial and you're like, dear God, what was life like before the iPhone, before technology? Just like ask your parents about nicknames of their friends because that was their pastime.
That was all the jokes.
Oh,
just
man.
Calling people, name calling. Cat calling and name calling.
Jesus, look at who people in the movie Grease played. Look at the character names by themselves.
Yeah.
It's like 6 Tonys, and it's like, God, we had to differentiate somehow. One of the 12, Thomas, called Twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples kept telling him, we have seen the Lord. But he said to them, if I don't see the mark of the nails in his hands, put my finger into the mark of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will never believe. And I think that's a valid argument.
I mean, more people should think like Thomas. Absolutely. Like, prove it.
Yeah, Thomas.
I got to see this.
Thomas is looking for empirical evidence, and I don't think that that's outside. And Jesus doesn't really respond negatively to that at all. Thomas gets referred to as Doubting Thomas forever because of this passage. No,
it gets turned into a joke right after this.
They're like going to the yearly disciples retreat over in Atlantic
award
City.
Ceremony.
Yeah. And they're just like
fastest disciple year 2, John.
Yeah. Most doubting disciple, Thomas.
The twin.
Thomas is sitting there like, I don't think I'll win it this year. And they're like, Thomas wins.
Prove it.
Prove it. After 8 days, his disciples were indoors again, and Thomas was with them. Even though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them. He said, peace to you. He said to Thomas, put your finger here and observe my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Don't be an unbeliever, but a believer. Thomas responded to him, my Lord and my God, because he started to believe. And Jesus said, because you have seen me, you have believed. Those who believe without seeing are blessed. And that's just Jesus kind of alluding to the fact that he won't be around forever. I think. He's just kind of hanging out for a little bit. And he's like, I won't always be around to, do this old trick.
We can't do the old finger in the hand hole every day. You have to wean you off all the holes.
But even then, Jesus, I said it before, that his response isn't necessarily negative, but it does seem a little bit negative near the end. Like he's kind of...
It's a little bit of a knock. He's kind of like, this is fine, but I prefer if you just didn't do all this. Like, you're blessed if you didn't need all this pomp and circumstance.
But literally no one else in this story believed in Jesus without seeing him first.
That's true. Yeah. Everyone else, saw him appear to him and talk to him and break bread and all that jazz and get blessed.
And so Thomas is getting the dirty end of the stick here because he just happened to be like, all of his friends are grieving. They followed this guy around for 3 years, and they were like, all of a sudden, he gets grabbed by the government, put on trial for 34 crimes, and gets indicted by some, New York district attorney. And it's just rough.
Right up there with, Nelson Mandela. Jesus. Who's the third one? I'm not. God.
But they follow this guy around, and then all of a sudden he dies, and you follow this teacher around who's saying like all this, who's giving some radical teachings at the time, during this kind of like, I would say kind of a bit of a heartless time in human society. You have the Romans running everything, and the Romans run everything like a well-oiled ship, but the way that they run things is not necessarily a human rights utopia.
Certainly not.
Yeah. And so Jesus is walking around going, hey, you know what you guys should do? Be cool. And and it's also, so you have like the Pharisees right here who are just like, they're the religious elite is what they're doing. They're walking around. They're like, thank God. My favorite parable in the entire Bible is the Pharisee and the tax collector. We talk about funny stories in the Bible. I do want to talk about the Pharisee and the tax collector at one point, because you have a Pharisee who walks in and says, thank God I'm not like a prostitute or like this tax collector over there. Like he points and it's like that guy in the temple, And all the tax collector does is say, God forgive me, I am a sinner. And at the end of the parable, the tax collector walks away blessed, the Pharisee does not. And it's because the tax collector has enough humility to know himself. And that was another thing that Jesus is kind of like walking around saying, just like, hey, know that you're kind of a dick and try to be less of one,
It's all of this. I mean, we could touch on the parables another time, but this does scratch at the teaching of Jesus and how I think it's been complicated and not watered down, but just skewed over the years, where I do agree with Jesus' message of loving one another, of not taking the law so seriously that you miss the point of the law. That's probably one of my favorite teachings of Jesus. I have to be very honest if I'm going to, call it for what it is. Like one of my favorites is the Sabbath, where people are talking about, oh, you can't. Your disciples, they can't pick the grain heads. The Sabbath, they're breaking the law.
Yeah,
and he's talking about like, hey, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for Sabbath. And I still apply that principle to my life all the time. Of like, what's the point of a rule if it's impeding upon whatever joy or whatever experience that you're trying to get out. Like something I joke about with Holly, my wife, all the time is like, if we are, throwing a party at our house or throwing an event, we've all been there. You're like trying to clean up a house and you're trying to like get things organized and you start getting stressed about having people over. And then you can ruin the whole experience by getting too stressed about preparing for the thing.
Yeah.
So we can have this rule about like, okay, if we're throwing a party, the number one rule is that we're doing this all for fun. So if we start feeling stressed, we need to like pause and just realize it's not worth getting in a fight or getting in like all stress mode just because we can't, I don't know, the vacuum cleaner broke or, something silly. So it's like some of those principles of Jesus, I think still resonate with me very much so. But unfortunately, it's like the church over the years, all the theology and all the like trying to make it work with the Old Testament and the commands and the covenants, it just gets so tough to like make it work for everyday life. It becomes too mystical and too ethereal all the time. It's like, no, just be cool. Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
Like live your life. Don't hurt others. It's really like, I don't know. Some of the message of Jesus, I really appreciate for that. And it did bring some good into the world. But unfortunately, Christians have ruined a lot of it.
Yes. Yeah.
What are your kind of final thoughts though about this resurrection story, Evan?
I feel like Doubting Thomas was always kind of put as in a negative light, and then I read that passage and I was like, but if I had the chance, I would want to see like the holes in the hands and the hole in the side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also,
especially if you follow the guy for that long.
Yeah. Also, like everybody else got to.
Yeah, damn it.
Come on.
They're being so hard on him, like, oh, I can't believe you need to do this.
I can't believe you needed this. I was like, shut the fuck up, Peter. You're the dumbest one. You're consistently an egghead.
And you're slow.
Yeah, you're slow. Exactly.
That's
Your fat ass couldn't make it to the tomb past John. He's the one who got naked that one time.
He's only got one leg.
Yeah.
At least one good leg.
Yeah, he's that one that, like, when we all ran, John forgot his clothes. That's in the Bible.
Oh,
it's there. I'm pretty sure it's in this. It's in this one. If we go back to like Jesus getting arrested,
he forgot his clothes. He ran.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
It's when he's in the garden, right? And he gets arrested.
In the garden.
Yes, he
taken arrested. Then the company of soldiers and the Jewish temple police arrested Jesus. Talking about the first one. I don't know where it is.
Why was he naked?
He just forgot his clothes. Like he ran so fast, I cannot actually find the verse right now, which makes this sound worse.
We're making this up.
I know, we're straight making this up. It kind of reads like he was running in place like a cartoon, and then zoop.
It was... What verse was it?
John naked in the Bible is what I'm looking for.
Oh, yeah, they left him and fled, and then it just says, now a young man followed him, wearing nothing but a linen cloth about his body. They seized him, but he left the cloth behind and ran off naked. Was it John?
When the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 parts. So they took one.
Oh, this is a whole nother topic we're going to dive into.
Man.
Another week, perhaps. Yeah, this was Mark... it's one of them. This is actually, you brought up, this is a whole other story, side note, of
it might have been Mark.
Well, that story in particular, though, is very fascinating because there's a lot of lore and conjecture about who that young man is and why he was nude and follow. Like, there's some wild interpretations of that verse of like some people think Jesus was gay and that was like his partner and he was unnamed to protect it. Like very like, you know, I mean, that's Da Vinci Code level interpretation of the Bible, like, but still fun to entertain.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, we might need to touch on that another week because that whole scene is actually really fun. Like not fun, but exciting.
Not fun, but not exciting. Just interesting.
You know, people getting arrested and crucified. A lot of fun.
Anyway, everybody's shitting on Thomas, and I don't think it's fair.
I like it. I mean, honestly, my final thought is I totally forgot about the race to the tomb. Just completely forgot that was a thing. And you pointed out, I read that verse as him not talking about himself and just another disciple, like an unnamed disciple. So that makes it 100 times funnier that he is just trying to be humble, but also brag about how fast
he is.
And somebody else who shouldn't be named, but it's the one that Jesus loved the most, we'll say, got there first.
Yeah. See, there was Peter, the founder of the church, but then the other one who was faster than Peter.
Let's just say, I think everyone knows what John 3:16 is.
Yeah.
You know, that's the most famous Bible verse.
Name me one verse in 1st or 2nd Peter.
Yeah, ain't nobody know those. Stupid books.
Honestly, and not my favorite books of the Bible.
No.
I mean, I love the Bible, but if I had to rank them, it would go John, then 1st John, then 2nd John, then 3rd John.
Oh, man. That's great.
Oh, man. What do you have to plug, Scott?
Well, I did go. It's not really a plug, but in my life, I went to C2E2 this weekend and saw a lot of nerds in a giant convention center. For those wondering, C2E2 is Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo. So I was in a giant convention center with like 20,000 cosplayers and comic book people.
Including your wife.
Including my wife. Because she had to see the Smallville cast in person. So we sat in line and got pictures with Smallville cast. And
like
she
Robert
got her
Pattinson?
photo with... Okay, I have to tell this story. I'll tell it super quick.
Yes, please.
Just, So my wife is a huge Smallville fan. I mean, and adores Tom Welling, who played Superman in the show. And we were telling my parents this like last week, like, oh, we're going to be up in Chicago this weekend. That's what we're doing. And my mom texted us, I think, on Thursday before we left. She just texted me, my wife, and just said, hope you guys have a great time this weekend. And then she sent a picture of Robert Pattinson, and it said Robert Pattinson, like right across the image even. And then she sent another picture of Robert Pattinson, but like in a suit. And she was like, this is my favorite picture of, and she was like, hope you have fun, like meeting your like TV crush this weekend. And then we were like so confused. We were like, first of all, how did she stumble upon Robert Pattinson? Because like, if you Google search Superman, you don't get Robert Pattinson.
No.
But it's like, and then if she Googled Robert Pattinson, then she already was way off base and nothing about like. So what was she? My theory is that somebody told her like she was trying to talk to somebody about C2E2, and someone might probably mention like, oh, Smallville, like that guy Robert Pattinson,
yes,
from that vampire series, Smallville.
You know, Vampire Superman.
So, who knows? But yes, we saw Robert Pattinson in person. It was great. So,
God,
how's your life going? What's going on over there?
Everything's going crazy. But I went and saw the Dungeons and Dragons movie this past weekend.
Yeah.
It was so freaking fun. You don't need to know anything about D&D to enjoy it. It is
so like me. Okay.
Yeah. Anybody can watch it. It's not. I think it does this nice little Pixar thing. How like Pixar is meant for kids, but like adults can enjoy it as well.
Yeah.
In the same way that like D&D is meant for like the Dungeons and Dragons movie is meant for everybody, but there's some extra stuff in there for like the nerds. Like for instance, they're like doing a Speak with Dead spell, which is a spell in D&D. Like there's a graveyard that they're in. It's like, and I can cast a spell and we can ask the dead person 5 questions. And then another character goes, 5 seems really arbitrary. And he's like, it does, doesn't it? So it's a nice little like, nice little tongue-in-cheek moment to like the D&D like rules and stuff like that. So it's pretty. So there's that stuff in there for like people who are like, even for those folks who don't know that much about D&D, you know that there are rules to it. But folks who are familiar with D&D will be able to like point certain things out and be like, oh, so that's that. I want to shout out our Christian video games. April 13th. That's our day.
Woo! It's coming up. Get ready.
When this podcast releases, that would mean like
a couple days from then.
I'm pretty sure it would be like
2 days
tomorrow or 2 days from now. Yeah. So April.
If we hold our promises,
and we always do.
Yeah.
April 13th, we'll be playing Adventures in the Old Testament. We'll be doing it on YouTube. Look out for YouTube. We'll be live streaming it. We'll be having a rip-roaring time, and
I'm excited.
I mean, I'll come.
I will also be there.
Yeah, I'll be there, and I'll come.
Yeah, we get it. You'll be there. You're coming.
Exactly.
I'll be. Yep.
Yeah. Are you going to come too?
Yep. I'm coming.
You're coming. Cool. We're both going to be coming.
Jeez.
And we'll both come and play video games.
All right. Well, happy Easter, everyone.
My name is
That's
Evan.
all we got. And I'm Scott.
And don't forget to close your Bible.